I'm here to answer two very important questions. What happens when we give Bello, Bard of Brambles, a rocket? And what happens when we turn them into a skeleton? Now before we get into this, you better believe we're going to be talking about layers. You ready for the quick layers recap?
3,
Here we go.
2, 1, go!
Layers are the order in which we apply multiple continuous effects to a board state. Continuous effects are effects that would change the printed information on a card, like turning an artifact into a creature and setting its power and toughness, or simply copying something with a clone. There are 7 types of effects, also known as layers, and we apply them in order of the layers list from top to bottom. I'm about to oversimplify these for the sake of the video, but the 3 most important layers rules to understand is 1. Layers are constantly checked and applied. If anything happens in the game, the layers are instantly checked and reapplied. 2. For the effects on the same layer, in most cases we apply them in timestamp order. Basically, the order in which they entered play. And 3. If a single effect impacts one layer, or a block of text impacts multiple layers, if part of that effect starts applying before it gets removed in layer 6, it will continue to apply. This will be important for later. Now, with that out of the way, what happens when we have Bello in play with one of the 7 spacecrafts from Edge of Eternities? Let's say we have the Dawnsire Sunstar Dreadnought in play. What would it look like with no charge counters on it with Bello, and what would it look like with 20 charge counters on it with Bello? As a reminder, Bello, Bard of Brambles says, during your turn, each non-equipment artifact and each non-aura enchantment you control with mana value 4 or greater is a 4/4 elemental creature in addition to its other types, and has indestructible, haste, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And if you've watched one of my other Bello videos before, you'll know Bello's ability impacts layers 4, 6, and 7. Now let's take a closer look at a spacecraft. Currently, all spacecrafts have the station keyword, and they either have 1 or 2 station symbols. The station ability allows you to tap creatures and add a number of charge counters on the spacecraft equal to that creature's power. So if Dawnsire was in play with no charge counters on it, and we played Bello, I think we can all agree that Dawnsire would become a 4/4 legendary artifact creature, spacecraft elemental with indestructible haste, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And while the spacecraft has no counters on it, these other abilities here don't exist, right? Or do they? So this is one of those situations where we actually need to take a look under the hood, so to speak, and check what the comprehensive rules says about station. Jumping to section 721, which covers station, the 2 rules we care about are 721.2a and 721.2b, which tells us that station abilities read like this. As long as this permanent has n or more charge counters, it has these abilities. And as long as this permanent has n or more charge counters on it, it has these abilities and is a creature with base power and toughness as marked in addition to its other types. So effectively, the spacecrafts look like this, meaning that these 2 static abilities are going to be applying a continuous effect to the spacecraft as soon as they enter play. One thing I want to clarify, both the spacecraft's continuous effects and Bello's ability don't ever turn off, so to speak. While Bello's ability only applies during your turn, and the station abilities are only applied once the spacecraft reaches a certain amount of charge counters, both of these effects' timestamps are tied to the card itself and are constantly checking to see if you get the additional effects or not. Think of them like a TV on standby. So if we had a spacecraft that was fully stationed and Bello in play, the only part we need to focus on is the power and toughness side of things. And it's really simple. We just apply the power and toughness setting effects in timestamp order. If Bello was in play first, we set the spacecraft to be a 4/4, and then we would apply the Spacecraft's power and toughness setting effect. However, if the spacecraft was in play first, the end result, no matter if the spacecraft was fully stationed or not, it would be a 4/4. Again, this doesn't change if the spacecraft becomes fully stationed after Bello enters play. We apply the continuous effects in timestamp order, which is tied to the card itself. Next, what would happen if Bello got reanimated by Xu-Ifit, Osteoharmonist? Now, if you were paying attention to the start of the video, you should already know the answer to this question. Let's quickly review Xu. They say, tap, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's a skeleton in addition to its other types, and has no abilities. Activate only as a sorcery. So there's two layers that Xu impacts here. We have a layer 4 type changing effect here, giving the skeleton card type. And next we have a removal of abilities here. So that applies in layer 6. So we resurrect Bello with Xu. Now let's go down the layers list and apply the layers. Now there's a new layers rule with the release of Edge of Eternities, 613.7n, that we quickly need to cover. I'll talk about this in more detail in another video, but all you need to know is that thanks to this rule, Xu's continuous effects will be applied to Bello last. We'll start at layer 4. Bello makes artifacts and enchantments, creature elementals, and Xu makes Bello a skeleton. We then move to layer 6. Bello gives the artifacts and enchantments indestructible haste, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And then Xu removes all abilities from Bello. Now, as we've mentioned before, thanks to rule 613.6, if an effect starts to apply in one layer and or sublayer, it will continue to be applied to the same set of objects in each other applicable layer and or sublayer, even if the ability generating the effects is removed during this process. So even though Bello will have no abilities at this point, we still continue to apply their continuous effect. Finally, we move to layer 7b and set the artifacts and enchantments power and toughness to 4/4. So we end up with a Bello with no abilities and is a skeleton, but all artifacts and enchantments with mana value 4 or greater will still be creatures during your turn. So there we go, another set, another weird Bello interaction. Have you got any more for me? As always, be sure to like the video if you learned something, and subscribe, because if you don't, I'll send Bello to the next eternity. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.